Good morning, Sandra. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Awesome. Good. Well, I'm super excited to talk to you today, and thank you for making the time and availability for us to get together. We had a yeah, we had a great pre-call together, and I learned a lot about what you are doing in your advocacy. And I learned even more as we talked about earlier when I was researching more about you. So maybe we can just start with you giving us a quick introduction to you, Sandra, and to my autism connection.
Great. Yeah, thank you for having me and the opportunity to tell you more about what I do.
Yeah.
So, I guess it can start with just saying that I'm a mom of three adults, young men who are out there in the world doing their own thing. But it wasn't, I guess, an easy start, and that's how I got my kind of start in this world. So my journey was starting as a radiographer. I
Oh,
spent 18 years of my career
hmm.
working in the medical field. And lo and behold, as our middle son was kind of struggling in school, we knew kind of at an early age
Sure,
he was a little different, but we weren't kind of putting our finger on it. So we started doing a little research on our own because the
sure,
doctors weren't really helpful with pegging anything. That we were
sure.
like, okay, something's up. What are we working with here?
Right,
And
right.
so it was a long process.
Mm.
Doctors back then were quick to kind of just want to give you a script.
Yeah,
And so
right.
they were at that time, in the mid 90s, they were saying, okay, Ritalin.
Sure. Put him on some
And
sort
we're
of
like, no, we don't
antihypertensive.
have a
Yeah, 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 yeah,
right.
yeah. I
So
said
we're like, okay,
hypertensive,
no,
but I
that's
meant
not it. We
hyperactive.
don't want this
Yeah,
as script.
right.
Right, hyperactive, right. But
Yeah.
but still, it's like just give us a script rather than give us a diagnosis. And so we were
Mm.
like, no, that's not it. And so, just kind of doing a lot of our own research, we were like, okay, that's not it. We want to keep going. Let's figure this out.
Hmm.
And so we kept just looking into things and we started saying, okay, we're seeing some patterns of behavior. We
Sure.
think we need to get some more studies done.
Mm.
Long story short, there, we're now going to the doctor saying, we want you to do some more testing and we want
Right.
these things done. But it wasn't an easy process because insurances at that time didn't cover a lot
Didn't.
of
Sure.
things.
Sure.
Right. So, of course, it was a lot of money and a lot of
Hmm.
time and also travel because in our area in Southwest Florida, they didn't offer a lot of these services. So now we're
Oh,
talking about having to go to Miami or go up to Tampa or,
sure.
like trying to research and find the resources to
Mm.
get these things done. So, um, that wasn't easy. And
I bet it wasn't.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and through that, we're talking from starting at the age of 4 and then
Wow.
moving forward. He didn't get a diagnosis until 15.
Wow. So for those 9 years, you were just kind of, or no more. You said four to,
Yeah,
yeah, you just absolutely just trying, 11 years, trying to understand what is
yeah,
happening, what is going on. Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
in that process, kind of was born the advocacy
Mm.
because of the necessity, right?
Yeah.
Because at that point, I'm having to learn the educational system, learn about how to fight
Mm.
for the educational rights of our son to make
Sure.
sure that he was getting what he needed, what was required by law to make sure that he was getting those services and supports
Right.
in those academic years. And it was quite the battle
Wow.
because they're not ready to just hand over
Sure.
a list of things and say, oh,
Sure.
you get this and
Hmm.
your son gets all of these, services.
Sure.
No, it was having to dig deep. And so I went ahead and got educated by special education attorneys
Sure.
to learn what our rights were,
Mm.
what we had available to us to learn then how to request these things and then how to enforce the
Mm.
district to comply to
Right.
getting those services. So that was the start of the
The start of it.
advocacy world. Yeah, because really no one was doing that.
Right. Right.
At least not in our area,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. I have,
So that
go ahead,
started.
please. Yeah.
And then later on, because he was now exiting the school system, was now what was next.
What do
And
we do?
that's when
Right.
my autism connection
Right. Became.
Right, because the next phase, what do you do when you graduate high
Sure.
school?
Sure.
What's after that? And
Right.
there were no supports or services for autistic adults because
Mm,
that's what he was diagnosed with at that point back at 15 was
right.
now we have a diagnosis of autism. What do we do?
Right. I I see so many people, Sandra, that are standing on your shoulders, right? I think of in my own personal life, we may have talked about this earlier, but my wife is a what's called a community liaison librarian. So she works for a public library, but she is the liaison to the community.
Okay.
And one of the community groups that she works with is a group of ASD adults that come in to the library, and they're at that point where they've graduated from high school, right? And they're in sort of this program that they can stay until, I think, until they're 21 or 25, maybe. But then there's like this tremendous drop off, right, for those individuals.
Yeah.
And I look at that program that she's involved in, and I know that that program is standing on your shoulders and the shoulders of so many other people, right,
Right.
who blazed the trail for advocacy back in the 90s or the 80s or even probably even the early
Right.
2000s. So this is a very personal and very professional mission for you. Let's just back up the train 1 second, and can you just
Sure.
articulate the mission of My Autism Connection for us as it stands today in 2024?
Yeah, well, and
Yeah,
that has been a journey in itself because
sure.
obviously, you have a vision, right? And for
Right.
me, it was, how do we get our autistic adults, because
Mm,
once, you graduate high school, 17, 18, now, you're now looked at as the adult, and now there's this gap.
right.
So I, wanted that mission to be, providing opportunities to develop skills, to from, towards from dependency to independence,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But then, foster those authentic friendships
Sure.
and then empower them, to empower for acceptance because
Right.
and that encompasses so much
Right.
because it's I think self-acceptance
Right.
along with community acceptance.
Sure. Sure. I definitely want to talk to you about all of the community partnerships you've driven and built, right?
Right.
To create. As
Right.
part of the um structure, I guess, of My Autism Connection. It is a member-driven organization, correct?
Right. Right.
So tell us a little bit about how that works organizationally, the function, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So that was very important for me.
Mm,
I wanted it to be member driven because I wanted their voices to be heard.
mm,
For me, it wasn't about my autism connection.
right.
It was each person that was involved's autism
Right.
connection, right? And
Right.
so therefore, it was important for us to listen to their voices so that they were included
Mm,
on what that programming was about. What did they want to learn about? What did they want to do in their lives? Where did they want to go?
mm,
Right. And so we do surveys. We want to get their input. We're
sure.
constantly putting out, these little cards and saying, okay, what is it you want to learn about this week? What do you want to learn about this month? What do you want
Right.
to learn about? What do you want to be exposed to? Where do we want to go in the community?
Hmm.
Who do we want to have come in and talk to us? And then we'll make that happen,
Mm,
right? To the best of our ability, we're going to get this introduced to us, infused in our lessons,
sure.
somehow get that to the table so that we're
Sure.
having those conversations and introductions.
Mm,
And so that to me is actually, that has giving them voice,
right.
right? To
Right.
say, this is what you're asking for, this is what we're going to deliver.
Right. And is it just a situation where, like you mentioned, it's about them feeling that their needs are met and they're, you're like you said, you're sending out cards, you're asking people what do they want to hear from. Is it just advocacy based services or are there many other
Um,
yeah, I'm seeing by your face
yeah.
there's many other facets to this. Yeah.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
okay, so I guess when I started this, my whole like center point was from a mom's perspective, right?
Yeah. Right.
I knew that what I wanted for my son was I knew that if I were not going to be here forever,
Sure.
what did I need him to be proficient in?
Mm.
What did I need him to be like, okay, if I wasn't here any
Sure,
longer?
sure,
And I
right.
knew I heard that from a bazillion parents, moms that I had spoken to over
Hmm.
the course of years, that these conversations were real and
Right.
everyone was losing sleep over this. And so I said, okay, so if I were no longer here, what did we need to make sure that they were proficient in? Okay, so we know when they get up,
Right.
okay, they have to learn how to,
Right.
self-care,
All of these
self
like activities of daily life. Yes.
everything,
Self-care. Yeah,
all of our
sure.
daily life skills,
Hmm.
right? Then cooking. Like we don't
Mm.
want them to just be putting something in the microwave and just,
Right.
that's their
Heating it
meal.
up. Yeah, right. Yep.
Right. So we need to learn how to be comfortable in your kitchen. And we're not
Mm.
talking about industrialized kitchens. We
No.
need a
Home
simple
cooking. Yep.
stove and,
Yep.
the simple things, right? But make
Right.
it realistic. And
Right.
then, so just daily life skills, cooking skills, and then we'll talk about the employability skills, right?
Mm.
So
Yep.
resume building, mock interviews, how to dress your appearance when you're
Sure.
going for an interview. And even if it's a virtual interview, how do you
Sure.
present that? What are
Right.
the etiquettes, right? The
Hmm.
unspoken rules, the
Mm.
soft skills that you need when you're
Right.
going to a job.
Mm.
So all of these conversations we're having and we're bringing in the professionals because I don't know it all, right? So I don't
No,
teach
well,
everything.
it's important that yeah, you absolutely realize that I don't have the answer for everything, but I'm going to go and find people who do
Absolutely.
have the answers, right? Yeah,
Absolutely,
and bring them
absolutely.
into this.
So
Yeah.
we bring those experts in to then present on all of those subjects
Mm.
because we want those experts to be speaking on those areas. And
Sure.
then they're hearing it out of those professionals' mouths. And
Right.
and they're getting either the tactile tools or they're getting, the
Sure.
information from them. And then if they have questions, they're in their own areas to ask those questions in a comfortable space, an
Sure.
area
Sure.
they can be themselves because it's okay and they
Mm.
feel safe.
Mm.
So anything that they have questions on. So we even bring mental health specialists to come in
Wow.
and
Wow.
talk about mental wellness
Hmm.
because we want them again to be comfortable
Hmm.
and invite them
Mm.
to ask questions that maybe they didn't,
Yeah,
know
feel
were safe.
comfortable asking or didn't know to ask, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Because in a
What's that
lot of
saying? You don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
a lot of times, and many of them, like our own son, were
Mm.
late diagnoses,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
Or undiagnosed, until they came to us. And
Sure.
then we set them up with whoever they should get the diagnosis, get the evaluations from, and then
Right.
discovered,
Right.
that they had,
Right.
autism, and then we would help them from there. But it was that journey of discovery
Mm.
and now they're kind of learning about themselves. And
Mm.
at the same time, so it's self-acceptance and now discovery of what do I do with this newfound information and how do I process it and where do
Sure.
I fit in the world? And now I'm trying to make space for myself
Right.
in the
Right.
group and know where I fit, right? Because I
Mhm.
knew that I was different, but I didn't know where I belonged. And
Yes.
so that's giving them space to feel safe, comfortable, and accepted
Sure.
in this new environment. So
Sure.
we're kind of creating that for them, that world of safety,
Uh,
within.
it's fascinating, and thank you so much for taking us through the functional aspects of that. So much of what you're saying there about that, safety and belonging, and everybody wants that space, right, where they
Yes.
feel like they belong and they see themselves and others in themselves, and
Yeah.
it's so important, right?
Yeah.
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 You've done a lot. We talked about it a minute ago with the building of partnerships within your community, and certainly, Sandra, we've seen some not so great things in the news, right?
Mhm.
About how people with ASD are sometimes treated by certain aspects of their
Mhm.
community. You've done a lot of work with law enforcement, with other professional institutions, organizations, private and public. Um, Talk to me a little bit about those collaborations and why they're so important, Sandra.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm.
I can't stress the importance. I mean,
Mm.
that is still like a very important mission,
Sure.
to continue those collaborations and
Mm.
partnerships because
Hmm.
I feel like it's not enough. I
Right.
feel like we've just scratched the surface and yet there's still, it's still going on, right?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
happening. but it's not enough. I feel like we need
Right.
to do years
More.
and years of this,
Sure.
constant entrenched, kind of work.
Sure.
But, the little work that we do with the law enforcement, the local law enforcement agencies,
Mm,
is tremendous.
mm,
We do what we call a driver's challenge,
mm,
which we partner our autistic adults with deputies.
mm.
Um, we pair them in their vehicles. So the
Wow.
autistic adults' vehicles, if they have a permit or a driver's license,
Sure.
they can partner with a deputy in their vehicle. And we take to what they say, like driving stations, like different
Yeah.
stations, and they go through driving maneuvers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we do a mock traffic stop.
Okay.
So then they really
Yeah.
kind of, and even though it's a mock stop, right?
Sure.
It's you're
They commit
heightened.
to it. You commit to
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
your whole sensories are heightened because it's
Sure.
like you're going through that
It
process.
feels real. Yeah.
The point of this is and how it started was through a teen drivers challenge that our youngest son went through. And I
Mm,
said, whoa, why aren't we doing this for our autistic group? Right?
mm.
Because
Yeah.
they need it more than anyone because they don't
Sure.
know necessarily what the rules of the law, the
Right.
road, laws are
Right.
necessarily in those moments. And so why aren't
Hmm.
we doing this for them? So I had this big meeting with all the heads and they said, well, how many autistic adults are driving? And I wanted to, I don't know if I wanted to cry,
Right.
laugh,
Right.
choke them. Like, I
Right.
didn't know. I
Yeah.
had so
It's
many
like,
mixed
yeah.
emotions at that time.
Sure. Yeah.
And I said, are you kidding?
Are you kidding? Yeah. Yeah.
I just like, I wanted to lose it, but I just
Yeah.
calmly
I
said,
mean, did they think that
okay.
no one's no one with ASD has a driver's license?
Right? I was
Yeah.
like, okay, let me just gather myself here for a moment.
Right.
I'm like, okay, more than you'll ever imagine,
Right.
I said,
Yeah.
because they could be in this room right now,
Sure. Yeah.
And I said, there are many autistic, adults that, are successful,
Sure.
business owners and in estranged, marriages that, with adult children and, like I could go on, right?
Go on and
However,
on. Yeah.
yes, there are, thousands probably,
Right.
beyond, so I'm like, okay, so we're good with
Yeah.
this? We're gonna go
So we're
ahead.
good
So we
now? Yeah.
started
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we started this program and it was so successful
Sure.
that so they're going through the maneuvers, we're going through this training, and we go through the mock traffic stop, and they're asking amazing questions,
Right.
like to the point that the deputies are like, whoa, like
Mm.
they were not prepared for the questions that they were being asked.
Hmm.
It was just incredible the dialogue that was happening. And then
Sure.
afterwards, the deputies came to me and said, I had no idea that the person I was partnered with was even
Right.
on the
On
spectrum.
on
Like
the spectrum.
their
Yeah.
language was very different. And so they were like, I didn't even know that they were
Right.
autistic.
Right.
And so, and then the conversation went even deeper and they said, I think I just met my son. Like
Mm.
that they
So all of a sudden they
identified
see that.
characteristics
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
that mirrored their own
Mm.
child.
Sure.
And I was just blown away and they're in
Wow.
tears.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that was eye-opening
Sure.
and so profound. And I said, like, yeah, we need to get to more.
Right.
We need to have this conversation with like so many more people
Sure.
that
Yeah.
and professionals that need to know that this is not something you see,
Right.
right? This is not a diagnosis that you can just say, "Oh yeah, I know that."
I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just
Right.
easily
Or
identify.
you don't wear a metal alert bracelet for it or
Right,
something. Right. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and so then I go also into the academy,
Mm.
into law enforcement academies and
Oh, even
train there.
start earlier. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, because
Yeah.
we have to have those conversations. And so while they're in their, just getting their trainings, I'm
Mm.
having those conversations saying, listen, I'm not the bad guy telling you what to
Sure.
do in your job. The idea is that, I'm also married to law enforcement
Right.
and want my husband to come home safe at night. I want
Want
my
everybody
son
to
to
be
be
safe.
safe,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so
Hmm.
therefore I want you to be safe, right?
Right.
And so if we can ensure that through good communication,
Hmm.
right, our best approach is to have, just good, thorough communication and
Communication. Yeah.
think,
And think.
how
Yeah.
how am I approaching this person, right?
Right.
And so if I approach everyone with that process,
Sort of mindset. Yeah. Yeah.
right,
Right.
right. So,
Yeah.
I think that we can be on the right foot.
Mm.
Right.
So important. And I talked about, like, like I said, what the community outreach that my wife does through her library, and kind
Right.
of building those community partnerships, and just you know individuals with ASD, and approach I just what you just said about approaching all individuals through that mindset,
Right.
right? It's so important.
Yes.
um you have worked very hard, Sandra, to achieve your own education here, right, in this area. You've become a certified autism specialist. You and I talked before about how my sister is an ABA therapist, so you and I have a lot of things in common. Talk a little bit about how, do you think it's important for every parent to become a certified autism
No.
specialist? What kind of drove you through that certification process? And again, this is kind of continuing that thread of these specialized trainings that you're so advocating for.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think any I don't think anybody is
yeah.
crazy enough to do all that as a parent. I think it's a
Right.
lot to ask any parent to do. But for
Sure.
me, I think it was important to have at least a level playing field when it came to the school
Mm,
system, right?
hmm hmm
Especially early on for me to have a voice at the
Sure.
table. So yeah, I went deep dive, right? And
Right.
I, and I
Yeah.
felt like
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in all in, right? And
Yeah.
and get as many certifications that I could possibly at the level I was going in. And because of my medical background, it
Right.
allowed for me to get those components involved
Sure. Sure.
at that level. So I had
Right.
the medical background along with the academics,
Right.
and those coupled gave me a little more,
You felt like
yeah,
this was really
secure.
a good fit for me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that opened the door for me to have more of an understanding of the spectrum,
Mm,
right? And not being a linear spectrum, but more of like that pantone, because there are
sure.
different they used
Mm,
to use comorbidities, but now it's co-occurring
right.
diagnoses, right? So then you have an understanding of each individual diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder is an individual, right? No
Right.
two are alike, as
Right.
Stephen Shore has said, each is an individual and they will present differently. And so you
Right.
have to have that understanding. So no, you're not going to approach everyone the same. You're
Sure.
going to approach each one individual. And that really, has an effect
You're right.
on even the program,
Mm.
that we have through My Autism Connection, because we can't just, brush stroke everyone and say,
Sure.
okay, this is
That's
how we're
kind
going
of
to.
counterintuitive to everything you've ever done, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have to be really cognizant of that. And when we, expect, we have an expectation, we can't
hmm
just say, oh, everybody has to do this way.
Right.
We have
Right.
to be very open-minded, and we have to say we're going to, offer it in different,
Mm,
modalities,
mm,
because we understand that not everybody's going to be able to comply this way. So
sure.
that, and even when we have guest presenters, and we have to let them know
Mm,
to also bring their different approaches
sure.
to the group, because they have to be at least open-minded to that.
Yeah.
So we have those great conversations to really think outside of the box, which they enjoy. It's
Right.
amazing how many great conversations we have with others in the community
Right.
about those different, ways of approach. So
Yeah.
I love having that, conversation, with each of them. But
That's
yeah, as far as like getting the certification stuff, yeah, I went a little, nutso
yeah,
getting
but
in there and getting all that, but it was so eye-opening for me
yeah.
just to be able to learn so much more.
Well, and it seems like this has really shaped the way that you can continue to support
Yeah,
members of My Autism Connection and the services that My Autism Connection provides. And it's just
yeah.
seems like, yeah, you again, people standing on your shoulders. Um, we talked before, entrepreneurism or entrepreneurial activity, being an entrepreneur, it takes so many different forms, right? It's not just I decide to open a bakery, or I decide to create an app for a phone, right? Or
Right.
I decide to do whatever. You have so much that you are doing as it pertains to advocacy for school-based services, legal guidance, all this work outside of my autism connection, which to me is very entrepreneurial, social entrepreneurship, right? How do you balance all that? Is it a way to balance? Someone on this show once before said, "I don't balance, I blend because I can't
Yeah,
balance, so everything does
yeah,
bleed and blend." Talk
yeah,
about, how this works for you, Sandra,
yeah.
this important work that you do.
I hadn't heard that one blend
Yeah,
before. I think I
yeah,
might pick that up because it is essentially blending. I think that
yeah,
if you compartmentalize too much, I think it gets a little muddy, right? And so I
yeah.
think blending is a good kind of definition for what
Mm,
it is you do. I think passion drives everything.
sure.
I think there are days that I get up and I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I
Yeah,
thinking?
sure.
Trying to do
Signing
all
myself
this.
up for this. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I set myself up for this, and what was I thinking? I put a lot on my plate, but
Right.
in retrospect, like I get those calls or I
Mhm.
get an email or and somebody is crying for help,
Right.
and
You're
I
like, how can
hear
I say
that
no to this?
call, and
Yeah,
how can I
yeah.
say no? It's like
Right,
and I hear somebody saying no, you can't, blah blah blah, whatever,
right.
an administrator or somebody, and I'm like, oh hell no, like, I'm like,
Just watch
so
me. Yeah.
yeah, and then it's just like I hear the call, the charge, to
Right,
lead, and I
right.
have to empower the family. So it's just a calling, or I
Yeah,
hear, an individual, that needs support, and I'm like, okay, so, here's where we can help. And
sure.
even if it's something that because in my Autism Connection, we support, we go by levels now because of the DSM-5, but level one
Sure.
on the spectrum, we get calls from all different levels.
Mm,
So I, as a mom,
right,
primarily, do not leave anyone in the lurch.
right.
So I say, for
You're like,
everyone.
this is counterintuitive to everything I've ever, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
like, okay, so we will find the resource. We will not leave you on your own. We will find you something to go to. So
Right.
even if we don't have that support or that resource,
Hmm.
we will get you somewhere that does. And so
Sure.
we are never leaving anyone on their own.
Right.
So it's constantly finding them the resource. So we help people all over the nation and sometimes even overseas. So we're
Andy.
constantly doing those, dig deep
Yeah.
that
Sure.
resource and put them together, match them together with them.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yes, it's a constant work, but I like blending, and I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to put it.
Well, I think
And
in the talk about blending, you're always pulling from other experiences, right?
absolutely,
And
yeah,
adding them.
yeah,
So the benefit of this experience helps you inform you into this new situation. But I really,
absolutely,
I really do appreciate and empathize with what you just said there, Sandra, about, as a mom, as the like I can't ignore someone's cry for help, right? Or
yeah,
it's so counterintuitive to everything for me, right? That
absolutely,
that yeah,
absolutely,
yeah. But
yeah,
but but at the same time, you have there's only so much Sandra to go
yeah,
around, right? So yeah, you have
exactly,
to be respectful
yeah,
of that too, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that does
absolutely.
happen, yeah,
So we're still relatively early in 2024,
yeah.
getting a little later in the year, but it's still pretty early, first quarter. Talk to me about, when you kind of, and maybe you don't think this way, so it's okay if you don't, but when you sort of thought about what either Worth Advocacy or My Autism Connection or Sandra, or what you wanted to accomplish this year. And maybe, like, again, maybe you don't think that way. So just help me understand, how do you think? What were
Yeah.
some of the, where are you on that journey right now?
Yeah, I definitely see us, kind of expanding.
Mm,
I don't know if it'll be this year,
sure.
but we would definitely like to create that second base in Tampa.
Mm,
So, expanding the organization to have, a second location would be great because
mhm,
Hillsborough County is huge and there is a wait list already. And so
sure.
we already have a need. It's already been identified. And so we just need, to support that. And
Right.
so to be able to have that fulfilled would be amazing.
Mm,
I'm hopeful, but definitely need more support, financially
yeah.
and hands-on,
Sure.
help.
Sure.
I think I think the biggest um, kind of point that hurts us is that we're working with adults,
Right.
And people don't realize, the communities don't realize that autistic adults need support.
Sure. Yeah, they're adults at this point. They're good, right?
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
right. And
We need to
and they're not
focus on the kids with
right,
ASD, but kind of
right.
forget about the adults. Yeah,
Right. They
yeah.
tend to kind of just drop off and
Mm,
we work on kids and animals and that's it. And then they
right.
just kind of fade out on the adults. And so
Yeah.
there's, this there's it's a hard place to be in because
Mm,
we don't want to patronize and put like, the
sure.
face of an adult,
Right.
on the milk carton type of thing
Right.
and say the poor
Stigmatize
adult,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we don't want to make it look like it's they're not able-bodied.
Mm-hmm.
They
Of
are able-bodied. They
course.
just need support
Right.
to gain those skills, right?
Right.
They
Right.
and we can achieve, but we need the support to get there. And so
Right.
I think there's that way that we need to explain it, and we need
Mm,
to get in front of them to be able to explain it, but then in a way that they understand that we are going to be achieving
sure.
that goal. So
Sure.
there's this crossroad that, we're having a challenge on getting
Mm,
that message across to be able to
mm,
really express that because we see the results. We
right.
see, how well they do when they're given that extra support.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing. It's
Right.
just phenomenal.
Is there anybody, Sandra, and I'm afraid to ask this question because I'm afraid of what the answer is, but is there anybody that is getting it right? I mean, you started this organization because you didn't have the systematic
Right.
in place, in the early 90s. But is there anybody that's kind of getting it right? And you don't need to name names, but maybe just talk about
Yeah.
generally what they're doing to get it done right. Yeah.
No. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, only the families understand,
Yeah.
only those that are impacted by it. And we haven't been
Yeah.
able to reach those that have a bigger impact, the ability to
Right.
have a bigger
To
impact to
make a
be able
bigger
to,
impact. Yeah, I'm thinking
right.
about, larger governmental agencies or
Yeah. No.
large nonprofit foundations with deep
Yeah.
pockets and,
Yeah, not
yeah,
not in this arena. Like
yeah,
those that have more profound
sure,
disabilities,
sure.
or couple with other disabilities not
Right,
specific to autism,
right.
those have voice, right? And
Mm,
those have the pockets, have access to the
right.
pockets, deeper pockets.
Yeah, yeah.
But our world doesn't seem to have that
Mm,
same attention grabbing, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's where we kind of lose that
yeah.
that audience. And
And
so
and again, is that back to your original point about it doesn't grab the attention because of the focus on the adult population? Do you think there would be more attention if the focus was more on a pediatric population, or maybe not
that
even?
That I think
Yeah,
pediatric and also more profound.
gotcha,
I think that if they were
gotcha.
more need, if there was a
Hmm.
more profound need and they
Right.
weren't able to be successful,
Hmm.
which doesn't make any sense to me because I think that if
Right.
you can show success and you can be measurable and we have the data to
Right.
prove that, you would see, oh my gosh, end result,
Right.
right? And that
Hmm.
is what you want. I mean, if I was putting
Right.
my money into something, I would
Sure.
want measurable outcomes.
Sure. Sure.
But for some reason, we're not
Yeah,
equating
we're
that.
not seeing that. Yeah. Years ago, I worked on some public awareness campaigns for certain heart conditions, most
Okay.
notably like sudden cardiac death, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, people who were dealing with arrhythmias, undiagnosed arrhythmias.
Right.
And, we could turn to the American Heart Association and we
Right.
could turn to these large medical device companies and we
Right.
could turn to these large pharmaceutical companies and say, we're launching a public awareness campaign. I worked for a nonprofit medical society at the time.
Okay.
We're launching a public awareness campaign around these five heart conditions. And gosh, Sandra, they couldn't wait to give us money, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Because they looked at us like, well, we're a medical device company, we're a pharmaceutical company. The more people understand and realize that they may have these conditions, the more likely they are to come to us and
Right.
consume what we're selling them, right?
Oh,
Um, and it's I looked back on that time as being like a double-edged sword, right? So on the one hand, it was like, yes, we were driving awareness and public campaigns around these potential deadly conditions. But ultimately, it's to benefit those that are trying to profit off that, right? So,
Right.
does that exist in the neurodiverse community as well to an extent?
I probably.
Probably,
I
maybe
don't
not something
know.
you've witnessed, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I haven't
yeah,
witnessed it, but yeah,
yeah,
I mean, probably.
mm,
And I also know that there, are those bigger entities, that claim that there's a cure, for autism, that the adult population would, be in, up in arms about. They are
right,
absolutely anti,
right,
against that. And I'm not, you know, as a mom first with an adult son, I have to respect the
right,
adult voice, right?
right,
The autism community, you know, as diverse as it is,
mm,
right? There's, voices from all over in that community that, have
right,
different opinions. And yet at the same time, there's a lot of evidence out there that, we don't have a
sure,
cure. We don't
right,
have a cause, but you cannot have an epidemic, like based on,
mm,
just environmental, like there's just so
sure,
many things that are going on.
right,
I'm not a clinician. I don't know. I'm not a
right,
doctor. I can't
right,
say.
right,
But we have to work together. We
sure,
have to help each other, and we can't worry about what caused it yet. Like we
right,
can't. We
right.
have
People do
individuals
get
that
hung up on
need,
that. Yeah, yeah,
right, and
yeah,
we can't get hung up on it. We need to
right,
help support.
right,
And here's something that we can do.
sure,
We can provide support. We can help teach you.
mm,
If you want to learn something, if you
yes,
want to be independent and out of your parents'
mm,
home, and you want to be, in your own place, and you want to be able to cook a meal, and you want to be able
right,
to drive a car,
right,
and you want all these great things, here's what we can do.
mm,
And this is how I can help you get there. And I can walk you
sure.
through the steps, and we can set goals, and we can work together
Work
to work
together.
on
Yep.
those goals.
Mm.
And we have an internship program with the university, so the interns help
Oh,
with
wow.
observations, and
Yeah,
they're collecting the data, so we're
sure,
showing the progress.
sure.
And through all of that, we're seeing, success.
Successes. Yeah, and that's all
And
that matters.
so,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
so that's where we can make a difference. But not everybody's on board. There's some
right,
adults that don't want that, and
right.
that's okay. That's their
These are
choice.
adults. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
their
yeah,
choice.
yep.
But, we're here to help them, to champion them, to be their best advocate, to teach the
Mm,
families to be their son or daughter's best advocate.
right,
Um, I can, lead them,
right.
right? And it's
Sure,
up to them where they take it.
sure. Last question I want to ask you, Sandra,
Yep.
and this is a loaded one, right? But if I'm navigating a new diagnosis for myself, my child, what, you've got to, again, your journey here, your personal journey, all of your extensive experience. Is there advice that you offer to those folks? And what would that advice be?
Yeah, I think the biggest message I could say is never lower the bar,
Oh,
right?
I like that. Yeah, I
Never
like
lower the
that.
bar. I would say that raise the bar and don't
Mm,
settle for less,
mm, I like
right?
it.
Don't
I like
settle,
that.
don't even settle for status quo,
Right,
right? So
right.
raise the bar and don't settle for status quo would be the
I
takeaway
like
line.
that. I think so often too we settle for the lowest common denominator, to your point,
Right,
right? And we
right,
allow ourselves or our situations to drop to the lowest common denominator. I really appreciate what you just said there about let's not lower the bar and let's not
right.
settle. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's beautiful. That's great.
Just, there's just so many times that I've heard people settle for so
Yeah,
much less, and there's so much more opportunity
right,
ahead that
right.
we should we shouldn't settle.
I love it. Sandra, this has been wonderful, very educational for me. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I really enjoyed everything that we talked about and the very hard work that you're doing. Like I said, I see so many standing on your shoulders. So thank you again. And best of luck to everything that you guys are trying to accomplish. And we look forward to staying in touch, Sandra.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care.